Okay, welcome to Factoring Trinomials, Part 1. What we're going to be looking at are trinomials that have this form. No number in front of the x squared, plus or minus some number times x, and plus or minus a constant at the end. So that's what we're going to try to factor. All right, let's start off with the prep work that you would have to do in dealing with any of these types of factorings. The first thing you want to do is look for a greatest common factor and factor it out. So always important, look for a greatest common factor. It'll make the questions a lot easier if you can just take that out of the picture. The other thing you want to do is write the trinomial in descending order. Now what descending order means is basically the order that I've written the format at, that we want the x squared term first, then the x term, and finally the constant at the end. So this is what we're talking about when we say descending order. The other thing that you might consider doing, sometimes they have a negative x squared term, some situation like that. To make matters a lot easier, it's smarter to factor out that negative so that you end up with something like this. Negative, and then in brackets, x squared, and then the rest of the terms. Just makes life a lot easier. So that's what I consider the prep work. Now, to fully understand what we're trying to do here, let me just show you the reverse of what factoring a trinomial like this looks like. The reverse of it is if you had to expand out the brackets when you have two binomials multiplied together. If we were expanding out the brackets here, we would go x times x, so x squared, x times positive 5, so positive 5x, positive 2 times x, so plus 2x, and finally positive 2 times positive 5, which is plus 10. So here's what the trinomial looks like. If you combine the two middle terms, we would have 7x's plus 10. So here is the trinomial, x squared plus 7x plus 10. And what a factoring question really is talking about is saying if we started with that trinomial, someone said factor this, okay, we're basically trying to get it back into this form where we have the two binomials multiplied together. Now, once you've done all your prep work, the procedure here is basically to say, I know what the final product is going to look like. It's going to look like two sets of brackets, and I basically have to fill in the blanks. So I know, how did I get this x squared at the start of the trinomial? Well, that came from up here when we went x times x. That's where that x squared comes from. So if you've got x squared, then you have no choice in the matter. You have to have an x at the start of each binomial. Then if we look at the constant at the end, the plus 10 in this case, where did that come from? Well, that comes from, and I'll just change colors here, that comes from the 2 times the 5. Okay, when we multiplied those two numbers together, that's where that 10 comes from. So what that tells us is that the number that goes here and the number that goes here, these two numbers have to multiply together and make 10. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply together to make 10. But, of course, there's a lot of possibilities. I mean, we could have 1 times 10. We could have 2 times 5. And we could also have the negative versions of that. So we could have negative 1 times negative 10 and negative 2 times negative 5. All those are numbers that multiply together and make 10. So which one is it? Well, the key rests with the middle term. The numbers that you pick have to add up. Because if you look over here, okay, the 2 and the 5, they become the 5x and the 2x, and they add up to the 7x. So it's important to know that, oh, the choice I have to pick here, they have to add up to make the middle term. So that narrows it down, and we see, it's got to be the 2 and the 5. Okay? So I'm just going to run through a couple of examples now and show you what that looks like with ones that we haven't necessarily seen the answer of. Okay. So let's try and factor x squared plus 10x plus 21. So I realize there's no greatest common factor, and it's already in descending order. No negatives to worry about, so I'm going to go straight into the two sets of brackets. So I see x squared, so I know it has to be x times x. Now what I'm looking for are two numbers that multiply together to make positive 21. Those same two numbers have to add up to make the positive 10 in the middle. So now it's just a matter of running through all the different possibilities. I go, well, there's 1 times 21, but they don't work because they don't add up to 10. And then I try, 3 and 7. Oh, that's all there is to it. Okay, and an easy way to check my work would be to expand out the brackets and make sure that I have the trinomial that I started with. Okay, let's try another example. Okay, let's try and factor something that looks like this. All right, in this case, I see, first of all, it's not even in descending order. So let's rearrange it so it's in descending order. Okay, so that's the first thing that I do. Then I look at it and realize I have a negative sign in front of the x squared. So I am going to factor that out. So that would be negative, then bracket x squared. Then I have to think, well, this will be plus 5x. And then to make that plus 36 at the end, I need a minus 36. All right, so I carry on now. I've taken out whatever rearranging that I had to do is already done. So now I'm just going to try to break it up into the two sets of brackets. I see to get x squared, I need an x times an x. Now I'm looking for two numbers that multiply together that make negative 36. And these same two numbers have to add up and make positive 5. So the numbers that I think I would try and work with, well, I think it's going to boil down to maybe a 9 and a 4. And of course, one of these has to be negative. If I want them to add up to 5, positive 5, then I'm going to make the 4 the negative. And so that's my answer. I got a plus 9 and a minus 4. And of course, I could expand out the brackets if I was concerned and wanted to check my work. Okay, one last example. We're going to factor 2x cubed minus 4x squared times y minus 48x y squared. Okay, first thing I can see is there is a greatest common factor, and I am going to factor it out. Whoops. There we go. So I can see a 2, 4, and a 48. So I can certainly factor out a 2. And then I see x cubed, x squared, and x. I can take out at least an x. Now, that's about all I can take out. So what does that leave me? That leaves me with x squared minus 2xy and minus 24y squared. So now I'm going to try and factor what looks like a little bit more of a trinomial with more stuff to it. And don't forget your 2x, and I'm going to try and fill in the brackets. Now I see I need an x squared at the start, so that means x times x. And at the end I'm trying to make negative 24y squared. Now what about all this y business? Well, don't let that spook you. All that means is that there's going to be a y packaged with the numbers at the end of your binomials. So that takes care of the y business. Now I'm really just focused on the numbers. I need two numbers that multiply together to make negative 24, and those numbers have to add up to make negative 2. And so I have to try various choices of numbers here, and eventually I will stumble across 6 and 4, and of course one of those has to be negative. I want them to add up so it's negative 2, so I'm going to make negative 6. So that looks like my answer. And of course I could expand out the brackets and confirm that, but I'm going to assume all is well and leave that to the interested student. So that is factoring trinomials part 1.